Hello there. Can we pause? Can I pause the recording until we're ready?
So, good afternoon, everyone. We're just going to wait a few minutes for everyone to log in, and then we'll get started very soon. So, just letting some folks join before we start our webinar today. Oh, we still have some folks joining, although we're slowing down. All right. Chris, do you want to share your screen now? Looks like we've settled down. Awesome. Wonderful. Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Hello and welcome to the Long Island South Shore Estuary Reserve Local Assistance Grant Program webinar. My name is Sally Kellogg, and I am a Program Implementation Specialist for the South Shore Estuary Reserve Program. I'm joined by Chris Clapp, who is the South Shore Estuary Reserve Program Director, and we also have representatives from our contract admin unit here today. Next slide, please. So today's webinar will provide an overview of the Department of State's South Shore Estuary Reserve Local Assistance Grant Program, including some background on the SSER program, the request for applications or RFA timeline, eligibility requirements, funding priorities, potential eligible costs, and application evaluation criteria. For more in-depth information, it's recommended all applicants read the entire RFA, which I will post in the chat in a moment. Next slide, please. And now I'm just going to go over some of the question procedures. So all attendees are muted, but you can ask questions in the chat. Go to the bottom right-hand corner of your screen and click on the chat feature to enter your question. We will be answering all questions at the end of the webinar. Another note, we will not be able to answer project-specific questions on eligibility. Eligibility is not always straightforward, and eligibility of an application will be based on information provided in the application itself. You may refer to guidelines presented today, as well as the request for applications for the eligibility criteria. If you have additional questions that come to mind after the webinar, you can also submit questions to our formal Q&A, and written responses will be provided. We will be providing more information on how to do this at the end of the webinar. And additionally, closed captioning is available. You can turn on captions or turn them off by clicking the CC button in the bottom left corner of the screen. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted to the DOS Funding and Bid Opportunities website as soon as possible. So that's our housekeeping. So now to begin our presentation, I will turn it over to Chris Clapp to talk about our South Shore Estuary Reserve Local Assistance Grant Program. Chris.
Thank you, Sally. And before I forget, I just want to thank Sally and Jeremy for all that they have done in getting this RFA to this point, as well as the other DOS staff on the call and many, many more who work behind the scenes to get this RFA out on the street. Okay, so for those of you who are not familiar, the South Shore Estuary Reserve spans the south shore of Long Island and its watersheds from the Nassau-New York City line to the village of Southampton. The reserve encompasses the two counties of Nassau and Suffolk County, the one state-recognized tribe, the Unkachugs and the Shinnecock Indian Nation, one city, the city of Long Beach, the 6 towns of Hempstead, Babylon, Islip, Brookhaven, and Southampton, and Oyster Bay. Sorry, there's tiny little Oyster Bay there. And spans from the high tide line along the Barrier Islands up through the upper reaches of the watersheds within Long Island. The goals of the SSER are to preserve, protect, and restore the natural resources of the reserve while achieving complementary economic and recreational goals. This next slide is a listing of all of the municipalities within the reserve. Includes all of the entities I previously mentioned, plus the 28 villages located within the reserve. If you are one of these municipalities, you are also eligible for this RFA. The timeline for this RFA, the RFA was released last Monday, June 9th, in celebration of World Ocean Day. The webinar is today, June 17th. Written questions will be due June 27th, 10 days from today. And then we will have those answers posted on or about July 7th. And then finally, applications will be due July 25th. We understand that this is a quick turnaround. However, we've been talking about that this RFA was coming since December. So many of you know this was coming. We finally have it here out for you, and look to hearing from you. So we'll get into some of the eligibility, as Sally had previously mentioned. Eligibility is a rather complicated thing, but we'll try and keep this as straightforward as possible. So all of the municipalities mentioned are eligible to apply. The recognized Indian nations within the reserve, as previously mentioned, are also eligible to apply. Academic institutions, so where this RFA differs in previous RFAs, academic institutions are included. The Nassau and Suffolk County Soil and Water Conservation Districts are also eligible applicants, as well as nonprofits, 501c3 nonprofits. All nonprofits must be registered in the New York State financial system on or before the application date. So if you are an NGO and you are unsure, I would check on this as soon as possible and begin that process as soon as possible. A little bit more details into the RFA. All of this information was pulled directly from the RFA itself. So you now have the link to the RFA, and you could follow along with us as this presentation roughly matches that of the RFA. Applicants must be received by the due date. Applications must be submitted by an eligible applicant. Application must be for an eligible activity and defined of Section 5. The state assistance, which I'll go through in a little bit more detail in subsequent slides. The minimum request is at least $50,000. As previously mentioned, nonprofits should be registered in the SFS system. And applicants must identify the legal landowners for the properties where improvements will be implemented. Applicants must provide proof that all final design and construction will be performed on public property or where a permanent public interest, such as an easement, is established. There's a whole section within the RFA called site control. Please read that carefully and feel free to ask questions within the questions period for us to be able to address anything with regards to property ownership or site control. Final design is anything considered over 30%, and planning and initial design is up to 30%. So the RFA calls for priority projects. So design and implementation of coastal resilience and living resource projects. This includes restoration and enhancement of natural resources such as SAV and wetlands, mitigation of barriers to diadromous fish species, and migration in the tributaries of the estuary, including river herring and brook trout. American eel should be explicitly called out there as well. Protection of natural shorelines or advancement of natural protective features in lieu of hardened shorelines. Water quality improvement projects, enhancement of existing or development of new marine debris removal programs, water quality improvement projects, including green infrastructure for stormwater projects or other stormwater intercept capture projects, and then as well as septic system upgrades, although private systems are not currently eligible. For those towns and the counties with Blueway implementation plans, implementation of those plans is eligible expenses. Projects that implement actions within the Seagrass Action Plan recently released last year, and programs that advance citizen science within the reserve. So those are considered the high priority projects. However, there is this other category which supports advancement of anything that's within the CMP. Eligible costs include personnel, staff time, project management, and grant administration are allowable expenses. Equipment is allowed. There's please read the fine print on equipment in the RFA, and the grant administration project management expenses may not exceed $15,000 or $50,000, whichever is less. And fringe benefits must be outlined in the application and include the organization's documented rate. Unfortunately, the ineligible cost list is a little bit longer than the eligible cost list. Indirect or overhead costs are ineligible. Salaries and other expenses of elected officials are ineligible. Land acquisition, match, you cannot use this for match for other state or federal assistance. Fundraising events, taxes, interest rates associated with bond Contingency costs, lobbying cannot occur with state funding, and costs incurred prior to the contract start date. And then all costs must be justified. So inadequately justified costs are not allowed. So the evaluation criteria is also clearly called out within the RFA. And here you'll see that the significance to the reserve, the priority, high priority projects, 25 points. Budget and cost justification, 20 points. Is the project ready to move? There's ranking for project readiness, a total of 12 points. The capacity to execute, how much stakeholder engagement is involved, program significance, leveraging partnerships, and then finally disadvantaged communities. There is a link to a list of DAC communities on the DOS funding and bid opportunity page. I believe all of those links are live within the CFA and on the program website as well. So as mentioned previously, questions must be submitted in writing so questions written in writing here also count towards this in writing questions period. Any other questions that are not asked here today must be in writing and submitted by June 27th with the subject SSER-47 RFA questions in the subject line. Responses will be posted on the web page, and the deadline for applications, as previously noted, is July 25th. And that was all I have as far as for presentation goes. Are there questions that we would like to get to in this? Should I stop the presentation, Sal?
I'm just gonna remind everyone to enter any questions they may have in the chat at this point. All right. Yeah, Chris, you can stop sharing your screen, I think.
I think that I can see the chat. On the screen.
All right. So Corey just asked, what percentage of the award can be advanced? 25% is typical for New York State reimbursable awards.
I don't have the answer to that, Corey. We will put that in writing.
Corey, this is a reimbursement grant, I believe.
He is calling out that it's often typical that 25% could be advanced. Brad's question. No, there was no limit to the RFA. However, if you look further on in the RFA, it does specify that DOS can negotiate a full or partial award. Oh, from the amount of pages in the RFA.
So yeah, Chris, I think you answered that. The limit is the maximum that we are offering. I believe the next question from Erwin, if we have a public access project starting next week, is there any way to get reimbursed for this, or are we too early for this project?
I'm going to defer to Mary Beth.
Sorry, I was muted. So the funding year for this one, RFA, let me just double check before I say something wrong, is 2025. So once awarded, you will be able to make the start date of any contracts the beginning of this fiscal year, which is April 1st. So even if you're not awarded or executed until next June, you will be able to backdate the start date to the earliest of April 1st, 2025. So if you were awarded a contract, you could include any work done next week if you were to backdate the start date.
I would just also remind folks that any expenses would have to be eligible for any work that's done outside of a contract period is anyway, it would all have to remain within the it would have to be eligible expenses. All right, next question from Sarah.
Yep.
Does DOS have a specific number of grants it intends to fund under this opportunity?
We do not have a target minimum nor maximum number of grants. It will come down to the scoring and significance of the projects. If there is, in fact, one project that seems so significant that it encumbers most or whole of the application, that it could theoretically take up the whole project, but I believe that unlikely to happen.
Our next question, can funding be used towards a marina and boat launch? I believe that is an eligible expense. It would just have to, as long as it scores well. At least a marina.
Erwin,
I was a boat launch for like paddle boards and human powered boats would be an eligible expense.
yeah, I don't know if the full development of a marina would be eligible.
Our another question is, are any any retro expenses would also need to be subject to MWBE, correct? The answer is yes.
Maureen's two questions.
We have the question from Maureen Murphy. Yes, there you go.
Okay. Does the start date have to fall within the 2025 year?
Let Mary Beth take that.
Yep, so just double checking something else as well. 1 second.
It looks like
yeah, so it will not need to fall within the 2025 year. So these contracts, I believe, are 5 years. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sally and Chris.
correct.
3 year.
Oh, 3 years.
Yes,
Okay, so sorry, 3-year contract.
And they're 3 year contracts. I believe the language is the potential for
Yeah,
1 year
we will be able to
extensions.
extend. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Okay, so
it
they'll
has to
be
be
3-year
well justified.
contracts.
Yeah.
With the funding is usually about 10 years. So the funding should be available from 4/1/2025 to March 31st, 2035. So your 3-year contract needs to fall within those dates. So you have a 10-year time frame to choose from. So you can, like I mentioned, backdate it to April 1st, 2025, and then you'd have until 2028. Or if you didn't start until 2027, you would have until 2030. So it does not need to fall. The start date does not need to be within 2025. Just the entire term has to fall within the 10-year funding.
I think that answers Corey's question as well.
Question from Christina.
Done.
If we plan to expand upon activities occurring along established Blueway trails, is this considered expansion of the Blueways trail? So I would say if someone is looking to expand one of the sites on the Blueway Trail or add an additional site to the Blueway Trail, that is an activity that is outlined, that is an eligible activity. Our next question, can revetments and erosion mitigation in Mauritius Bay on Southampton Trustees land be eligible?
So I believe that comes down to the site control question, Erwin, where the applicant and the owner need to, there's some specific language on site control and letters of intent to get to that first 30%, and then additional for that final design and implementation, and additional documentation. Theoretically, yes, that would be an eligible project. You would have to work out the site control requirements with the trustees. And a couple of thank yous from Corey and Morgan. Erwin, section 5 goes into requirements for implementation and construction projects. Page 4 of 16 in the RFA. You're welcome, Mr. Mayor. I think we will hold for a couple more questions to come through. And once again, I'd like to thank SSER staff, DOS staff, and anyone else who helped get us to this point.
Going to remind folks to put questions in the chat. I see we have something in the Q&A, but I would encourage you to put them in the chat. Thank you, Michael. So if an applicant is seeking to make improvements to roadways as part of their project, but do not formally own those roads, would documentation confirming their regular operational maintenance oversight of those roads satisfy the site control requirement?
I might have to look into that, Michael. Not being a municipal law attorney, I'll look into that for you, Michael. Well, people are still here. We don't have anything else to present, so if there's no further questions,
I'm just gonna put if anyone thinks of a question after the fact, I'm just gonna put the instructions in the chat.
and we have the general SSER email box for them.
Correct. Questions must be submitted must be submitted to the SSER email box with the subject line as noted in the chat and as noted in the RFA by June 27th. All right.
Okay, I believe we could probably stop recording. People seem to have been leaving.
Yeah, so if thank you all for joining us and taking some time out of your day. We look forward to reading your proposals. And I'm going to say, and at this point, with no further questions, we will end today's webinar. So thank you again. All right, goodbye all.